I stared at the letter in my hand, my mind racing with questions. How could my son, Alex, be in $20,000 debt without telling me? I thought we had a good relationship, but I guess I was wrong. I decided to confront Alex about the debt. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves, and walked into his room. Alex, we need to talk, I said, trying to sound calm. I got a letter from the bank, and it says you're in $20,000 debt. Alex looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to keep it from you. I just didn't know how to tell you. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and concern. I didn't know what to say or do. But then I remembered something. A secret I had been keeping from Alex. A secret that would change everything. A $200,000 secret that would make Alex's debt look like nothing. I took a deep breath, trying to decide whether to reveal the secret or not. But then I saw the look in Alex's eyes, and I knew I had to tell him. Alex, I have something to tell you, I said, my voice shaking slightly. Something that might change everything. Alex looked at me, curious. What is it, Dad? I took another deep breath, trying to gather my courage. I have $200,000 in savings, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But there's something you need to know about it. Alex's eyes widened in surprise. What is it, Dad? I hesitated, unsure of how to continue. But then I knew I had to tell him the truth. It's not just any money, Alex, I said, my voice firm. It's the money your mother left me when she passed away. Alex's eyes filled with tears again, and I knew I had to continue. I've been keeping it a secret because I didn't know how to tell you, I said, my voice cracking. But I think it's time you knew the truth. Alex looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of emotions. I could see the shock, the surprise, and the sadness. But I also saw something else. Something that gave me hope. What does it mean, Dad? Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I took another deep breath, trying to decide what to say next. But then I knew exactly what I had to do. It means we have a chance to start over, Alex, I said, my voice firm. A chance to rebuild our relationship and create a new future. Alex looked at me, his eyes filled with hope. And I knew that no matter what happened next, we would face it together. As I finished speaking, the room fell silent. Alex's eyes were fixed on mine, searching for something, but I couldn't quite tell what. I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to process the revelation. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the weight of our conversation bearing down on us. I took a step forward, trying to break the silence. Alex, I know this is a lot to take in. But I want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what. We can get through this together. But Alex didn't seem to be listening. He was lost in thought, his eyes glazing over as he stared into space. I could see the pain and the guilt etched on his face, and my heart went out to him. Alex, talk to me, I said, trying to bring him back to reality. What are you thinking? He slowly came back to life, his eyes focusing on mine once again. I don't know, Dad, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I just feel so ashamed. I've been lying to you, and I've been in debt for so long. I don't know how to face you. I felt a pang of sadness, seeing my son so broken. But I knew I had to stay strong, for both of us. Alex, you don't have to be ashamed, I said, my voice firm. We all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn from them and move forward. But Alex just shook his head. You don't understand, Dad. This isn't just about the debt. It's about everything. My life is a mess, and I don't know how to fix it. I could see the desperation in his eyes, and I knew I had to act fast. I took a deep breath and sat down next to him, putting a hand on his shoulder. Alex, listen to me, I said, my voice calm and steady. We're going to get through this together. We'll face the debt, and we'll face whatever else is going on in your life. But you have to trust me, and you have to trust yourself. Alex looked at me, his eyes searching for reassurance. And for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of hope. But then his face fell, and he shook his head. "I don't know, Dad," he said, his voice cracking. "I just feel so lost. I don't know what to do." I felt a surge of frustration, but I pushed it aside. I knew I had to stay calm, for Alex's sake. "Alex, we'll figure it out together," I said, my voice firm. "But you have to promise me one thing." "What's that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You have to promise me that you'll be honest with me from now on," I said, my eyes locked on his. "No more secrets, no more lies. Can you do that for me?" Alex hesitated, and for a moment, I thought he was going to say no. But then he nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "I promise, Dad," he said, his voice cracking. "I'll be honest with you. I'll tell you everything." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was short-lived. As Alex began to open up, I realized that the truth was far more complicated than I had ever imagined. And I knew that our journey was only just beginning. Over the next few hours, Alex told me everything. He told me about the debt, and how he had gotten in over his head. He told me about his struggles with addiction, and how he had been using to cope with the stress of his life. And he told me about the people he had hurt, and the mistakes he had made. As I listened, I felt my heart break for my son. I realized that he was struggling with demons far more powerful than I had ever imagined, and I knew that I had to be there for him. But as the night wore on, I began to feel a sense of unease. I realized that Alex's problems were far more complex than I had ever imagined, and I knew that we were in for a long and difficult journey. And then, just as I thought things couldn't get any worse, Alex dropped a bombshell. A revelation that would change everything, and threaten to destroy our relationship once and for all. "Dad," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's something else I need to tell you. Something that I'm afraid you won't be able to forgive me for." I felt a surge of fear, but I tried to stay calm. "What is it, Alex?" I asked, my voice firm. Alex hesitated, his eyes filling with tears. And then, in a voice that was barely audible, he told me the truth. "It's about your money, Dad," he said, his voice cracking. "I've been using it to pay off my debt." "I'm sorry, Dad. I know it was wrong, but I didn't know what else to do." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My son, the person I loved and trusted most in the world, had been stealing from me. I didn't know what to say, or what to do. All I knew was that I felt a sense of betrayal and anger that I had never felt before. And I knew that our relationship would never be the same again. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My son, the person I loved and trusted most in the world, had been stealing from me. I didn't know what to say, or what to do. All I knew was that I felt a sense of betrayal and anger that I had never felt before. "How could you, Alex?" I asked, my voice shaking with emotion. "How could you do this to me?" Alex looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know it was wrong, but I didn't know what else to do. I was desperate, and I didn't know how to get out of the debt." I felt a surge of anger, but I tried to calm down. I knew that I had to think clearly, and figure out what to do next. "How much did you take?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Alex hesitated, and then looked down at the floor. "I took $50,000, he said, his voice barely audible. I felt like I had been punched again. $50,000 was a lot of money, and I couldn't believe that Alex had taken it from me without even asking. I felt a sense of betrayal and anger that I had never felt before. "Why did you do it, Alex?" I asked, trying to understand. "Why did you take my money without even asking?" Alex looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "I was desperate, Dad," he said. "I didn't know what else to do. I was in so much debt, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I thought that if I could just pay off some of the debt, I could start fresh and move on with my life." I felt a surge of sadness, hearing Alex's words. I realized that he had been struggling with his debt, and that he had felt desperate and alone. But I also felt a sense of anger and betrayal, knowing that he had taken my money without even asking. What are we going to do now, Alex? I asked, trying to think clearly. What are we going to do to fix this? Alex looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. I don't know, Dad, he said. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry for what I did. I'll do anything to make it right. I felt a surge of emotion, hearing Alex's words. I wanted to forgive him, and I wanted to help him. But I also felt a sense of anger and betrayal, knowing that he had taken my money without even asking. I need some time to think, Alex, I said, trying to calm down. I need some time to figure out what to do next. Alex nodded, and then looked down at the floor. I understand, Dad, he said. I'm sorry again for what I did. I'll do anything to make it right. I felt a surge of emotion, hearing Alex's words. I wanted to forgive him, and I wanted to help him. But I also felt a sense of anger and betrayal, knowing that he had taken my money without even asking. As I sat there, trying to think clearly, I realized that I had a lot of decisions to make. I had to decide whether to forgive Alex, and whether to help him. I had to decide whether to report him to the police, or whether to try to work things out on our own. But as I sat there, trying to think clearly, I also realized that I had a lot of questions. I had questions about Alex's debt, and about how he had gotten into this situation. I had questions about his addiction, and about how he had been using. And I had questions about my own role in all of this. Had I been too lenient with Alex? Had I been too quick to bail him out, and too slow to set boundaries? As I sat there, trying to think clearly, I realized that I had a lot to think about. I had a lot of decisions to make, and a lot of questions to answer. But as I sat there, trying to think clearly, I also realized that I was scared. I was scared for Alex, and for our relationship. I was scared about what the future held, and about what might happen next. And as I sat there, trying to think clearly, I knew that I had to be strong. I had to be strong for Alex, and for our relationship. I had to be strong, and I had to be brave. But as I sat there, trying to think clearly, I also knew that I wasn't alone. I had my family, and I had my friends. I had people who cared about me, and people who would support me. And as I sat there, trying to think clearly, I knew that I would get through this. I would get through this, no matter what happened next. I would get through this, and I would come out stronger on the other side. As I sat there, trying to think clearly, I knew that I had to take action. I couldn't just sit there and do nothing, waiting for Alex to fix his own problems. I had to take control of the situation and make some decisions. I started by calling my financial advisor, to get a better understanding of the situation and to figure out what our next steps should be. As I waited for him to answer, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anxiety. What would he say? Would he be able to help us fix this mess? The phone rang several times before he finally picked up. Hello, he said, his voice cheerful as always. Hi, John, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need to talk to you about something. Alex has gotten himself into some trouble, and I need your help to figure out what to do. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought I had lost him. What kind of trouble? He asked, his voice serious now. He's been using my money to pay off his debt, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He took $50,000 from me without even asking. There was another pause, and I could almost hear John's mind racing. Okay, let me see what I can do, he said finally. I'll need to look at the accounts and see what's going on. Can you come into the office tomorrow and we'll go over everything? I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yes, that sounds great. Thank you, John. We made plans for me to come into the office the next day, and I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. At least I had taken the first step in fixing this mess. But as I sat there, waiting for the next day to arrive, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Something was wrong, and I didn't know what it was. I tried to push the feeling aside, telling myself that I was just being paranoid. But as the hours ticked by, the feeling only grew stronger. I couldn't concentrate on anything, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if Alex had gotten in over his head? What if he had been using my money for something else, something worse than just paying off debt? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something, that there was more to this story than what Alex was telling me. And then, just as I was starting to drift off to sleep, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, and my heart skipped a beat as I answered it. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is this Mr. Johnson?" a voice asked, the tone unfamiliar. "Yes, it is," I said, my mind racing. "Who is this?" There was a pause, and then the voice spoke again. "My name is Sarah. I'm a friend of Alex's. I need to talk to you about him." My heart skipped another beat as I processed the words. Who was this Sarah person, and what did she want to talk to me about? "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we talk about it in person?" Sarah asked, her voice hesitant. "I don't feel comfortable discussing it over the phone." I hesitated, unsure of what to do. But something about her tone put me on edge, made me feel like I needed to know what she was going to say. "Okay," I said finally. "Where do you want to meet?" We made plans to meet at a coffee shop the next day, and I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of unease wash over me. What was going on? What did Sarah want to tell me? And why did I get the feeling that my world was about to be turned upside down? I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease as I waited for the next day to arrive. I had so many questions running through my mind. Who was this Sarah person? What did she want to tell me about Alex? And why did I get the feeling that my world was about to be turned upside down? I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept wandering back to the mysterious phone call. I couldn't concentrate on anything, and my anxiety level was through the roof. Finally, the next day arrived, and I made my way to the coffee shop where I was supposed to meet Sarah. As I walked in, I scanned the room, looking for a woman who matched the voice on the phone. That's when I saw her, sitting in the corner, sipping on a cup of coffee. She looked up and caught my eye, and I felt a jolt of recognition. She was younger than I expected, probably in her early 20s. She had long, curly brown hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through me. I made my way over to her, my heart pounding in my chest. "Sarah?" I asked, trying to sound calm. She nodded, and I sat down across from her. "Thank you for meeting me, Mr. Johnson," she said, her voice soft but confident. "I appreciate it." I nodded, trying to encourage her to continue. "So, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Sarah took a deep breath before speaking. "I've known Alex for a few years now," she said, her voice measured. "We met through mutual friends, and we've been friends ever since." I nodded, trying to process this new information. "Okay," I said, trying to sound calm. "What does this have to do with Alex's debt?" Sarah hesitated before speaking. "Alex has been in a lot of trouble lately," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's been using his money to pay off debts, but it's not just any debt. It's a debt to some very bad people." My heart skipped a beat as I processed this new information. "What kind of bad people?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Sarah leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm talking about loan sharks, Mr. Johnson. People who will stop at nothing to get their money back." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the gravity of the situation. Alex was in trouble, and I had no idea how to get him out of it. "What do I need to do?" I asked, trying to sound calm. Sarah hesitated before speaking. "I don't know if I should be telling you this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I think you need to know the truth. Alex is in a lot of trouble, and he needs your help." I nodded, trying to process this new information. "I'll do whatever it takes to help him," I said, trying to sound confident. Sarah nodded, a small smile on her face. "I knew I could count on you, Mr. Johnson." As we parted ways, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was in over my head. Alex was in trouble, and I had no idea how to get him out of it. But I was determined to try, no matter what it took. I made my way back to my car, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if Alex had gotten in over his head? What if he had made some kind of deal with these loan sharks that he couldn't get out of? And what if something happened to him? I pushed the thoughts aside, trying to focus on the present moment. I had to get to the bottom of this, and I had to do it fast. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number, my heart pounding in my chest. "John, it's me," I said, trying to sound calm. "I need your help. I just got some information about Alex's debt, and I think we're in trouble." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear John's mind racing. "What kind of trouble?" he asked, his voice serious. "The kind that involves loan sharks," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. John swore under his breath, and I could almost hear him thinking. "Okay, we need to get to the bottom of this," he said, his voice firm. "I'll start making some calls, see what I can find out." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Thanks, John. I owe you one." We hung up, and I sat in my car, trying to process this new information. Alex was in trouble, and I had no idea how to get him out of it. But I was determined to try, no matter what it took. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if? I drove to John's office, my mind racing with thoughts of Alex and the loan sharks. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head, that I was dealing with something much bigger than I could handle. When I arrived at the office, John was already there, typing away on his computer. "Hey, thanks for coming," he said, looking up at me. "I've been making some calls, trying to get to the bottom of this." I nodded, taking a seat in front of his desk. "What have you found out?" John leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers together. "It's not good," he said. "The loan sharks Alex has been dealing with are some of the worst in the business. They're ruthless, and they'll stop at nothing to get their money back." I felt a chill run down my spine as I listened to John's words. I had been afraid of this, but hearing it from someone else made it all too real. "What can we do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. John shook his head. "I don't know. We need to get Alex to cooperate, to tell us what's going on. But even then, I'm not sure if we can get him out of this alive." I felt a surge of fear at John's words. "Alive? What did he mean by that?" "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. John leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. "These loan sharks are not to be trifled with," he said. "They'll do whatever it takes to get their money back, including hurting Alex. We need to be careful, to tread carefully." I nodded, trying to process this new information. I had been afraid of this, but hearing it from John made it all too real. "Okay," I said, trying to sound calm. "What's the plan?" John nodded, a small smile on his face. "We need to get Alex to come in, to tell us what's going on. We need to know what we're up against, and we need to come up with a plan to get him out of this alive." I nodded, trying to sound confident. "I'll get him to come in," I said. "I'll make sure he cooperates." John nodded, his eyes locked on mine. "Good. I'll set up a meeting with him for tomorrow. We'll get to the bottom of this, and we'll get Alex out of this alive." I nodded, trying to sound confident. But as I left John's office, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head. I was dealing with something much bigger than I could handle, something that could get Alex killed. I drove to Alex's apartment, my mind racing with thoughts of the loan sharks and the danger that Alex was in. I knew that I had to be careful, that I had to tread carefully. But I also knew that I had to act fast, to get Alex out of this alive. When I arrived at the apartment, Alex was already there, sitting on the couch and staring at the wall. "Hey," I said, trying to sound calm. "We need to talk." Alex looked up at me, his eyes filled with fear. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice shaking. I took a deep breath, trying to sound calm. "We need to talk about the loan sharks," I said. "We need to get you out of this alive." Alex nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said. "I didn't mean to get in over my head." I shook my head, trying to sound calm. "It's not your fault," I said. "We'll get through this together." But as I looked at Alex, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head. I was dealing with something much bigger than I could handle, something that could get Alex killed. And I knew that I had to act fast to get Alex out of this alive. As I looked at Alex, I knew that I had to do something to help him. I couldn't just sit back and watch him get hurt by the loan sharks. I took a deep breath and made a decision. Alex, we're going to get through this together, I said. We're going to face the loan sharks and get you out of this debt. Alex looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Dad, he said. I don't know what I was thinking. I shook my head and put a hand on his shoulder. It's not your fault, Alex, I said. You were desperate and you made a mistake. But we can fix this. We can get you out of this debt and start fresh. Alex nodded, a small smile on his face. Thank you, Dad, he said. I don't know what I would do without you. I smiled back at him and pulled him into a hug. You'll never have to find out, son, I said. I'll always be here for you. The next day, we went to the meeting with the loan sharks. I was nervous, but I was determined to get Alex out of this debt. We walked into the meeting room and I saw the loan sharks sitting across from us. They were big and intimidating, but I stood my ground. We're here to talk about Alex's debt, I said. We want to make a deal to pay it off. The loan sharks looked at each other and then back at us. What do you propose? One of them asked. I took a deep breath and laid out our plan. We would pay off the debt in installments, and in return, the loan sharks would leave Alex alone. The loan sharks looked at each other and then nodded. All right, we'll accept your proposal, one of them said. But if you miss a payment, there will be consequences. I nodded, relieved. We won't miss a payment, I said. We'll pay off the debt and start fresh. The loan sharks nodded and we shook hands. It was a done deal. As we left the meeting room, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. We had done it. We had gotten Alex out of the debt and started fresh. Alex was smiling, and for the first time in weeks, he looked happy. Thank you, Dad, he said. I don't know what I would do without you. I smiled back at him and put my arm around his shoulders. You'll never have to find out, son, I said. I'll always be here for you. Over the next few months, we worked hard to pay off the debt. It wasn't easy, but we did it. And as we made the final payment, I felt a sense of pride and satisfaction. We had done it. We had gotten Alex out of the debt and started fresh. Alex was smiling, and he looked happy and free. Thank you, Dad, he said. I don't know what I would do without you. I smiled back at him and pulled him into a hug. You'll never have to find out, son, I said. I'll always be here for you. As we hugged, I knew that everything was going to be okay. We had faced our challenges and come out on top. We had gotten Alex out of the debt and started fresh. And as we walked out of the meeting room, I knew that we would always be there for each other, no matter what. The loan sharks had thought they could take advantage of us, but they had underestimated the power of a father's love. We had fought back and won, and now we could move on with our lives. As we walked away from the meeting room, I felt a sense of closure and satisfaction. We had done it. We had gotten Alex out of the debt and started fresh. And as we walked into the bright sunlight, I knew that everything was going to be okay. We had faced our challenges and come out on top. We had gotten Alex out of the debt and started fresh. And as we walked off into the distance, I knew that we would always be there for each other, no matter what.